Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy you're here today. I know you've come expecting something powerful, something life-changing, and I believe you're going to leave this place stronger than ever. You are not here by accident. You've been brought here for a reason, and I want to remind you of something that will transform your life today. Stop worrying. God will carry you through. When life gets tough, it's easy to let fear and doubt creep in. But I want to encourage you, don't let worry take over. Whatever you're facing right now, whether it's financial struggles, health challenges, or uncertainty in your relationships, don't worry. God has your back, and He is going to carry you through. When life starts to feel overwhelming, it's so easy to let worry consume you. We get anxious about the unknown, about what might go wrong, about the challenges we face. It's natural to have moments where fear and doubt try to take root. But in those moments, we have a choice. We can choose to let worry dictate our thoughts, or we can choose peace. Peace is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of God in the midst of them. Peace comes from knowing that no matter what happens, we are not alone. We have the Creator of the universe by our side, guiding us, comforting us, and giving us the strength to endure. When we choose peace, we stop focusing on what could go wrong and start trusting in what God has already promised, that He will never leave us or forsake us, no matter what comes our way. Worry doesn't change anything. It doesn't make us stronger, it doesn't solve our problems, and it doesn't prepare us for the future. But peace anchors us. It steadies our hearts when the storms of life come crashing in. It calms the chaos around us and helps us remember that we don't have to have all the answers. We just have to trust that God does. When we bring our worries to God, we're inviting Him into our struggles. We're saying, God, I can't do this on my own, but I know You can handle it. And in that moment, He meets us where we are, replacing our anxiety with a peace that surpasses understanding. Choosing peace doesn't mean that everything will be perfect. Life will still have its challenges. But when we embrace peace, we shift our focus from the storm to the one who calms it. It's in those moments of peace that God's power is most evident. He works in us and through us when we let go of the worry and allow Him to work on our behalf. So today, choose peace over worry. Embrace it, hold on to it, and trust that no matter what lies ahead, God's peace will carry you through. There are times in life when things don't go according to our plans, when the breakthroughs we've been praying for seem delayed or out of reach. We start to question, why isn't it happening? Why is this taking so long? Why does it feel like we're stuck? These questions are natural, especially when we're waiting on something important. But in those moments, it's crucial to remember something powerful. God's timing is always perfect, even when it doesn't line up with our own. We live in a world where everything happens fast. Instant communication, quick fixes, rapid results. It's easy to believe that things should move at the same pace, that we should always get what we want when we want it. But God doesn't work on our timetable. He works on a timetable that's designed for our ultimate good, for our growth, and for His greater purpose in our lives. Sometimes what we think we need right now isn't what we're ready for. Sometimes we need a little more time to prepare, to grow, or to trust Him more fully. Trusting in God's timing means surrendering our desire for control and accepting that He sees the bigger picture, the one that we often can't see from where we stand. We may not understand why things are happening the way they are, or why doors aren't opening as quickly as we'd like, but we have to trust that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating the perfect conditions for us to step into what He has for us. The waiting is never wasted. Every moment of waiting is an opportunity for God to shape us, to strengthen us, and to teach us to rely on Him. The delay doesn't mean that God has forgotten about us or that His promises are any less true. It simply means that God is preparing something even better than we could have imagined. His timing might look different than ours, but it's always for our highest good. When we're in the waiting season, it's important to keep our eyes on Him and not on the clock. When we focus on God's faithfulness, on the things He's already done in our lives, we begin to build a trust that withstands any delay. We start to realize that God isn't in a rush, and neither should we be. His pace is perfect, and when the time is right, everything will fall into place exactly as it's meant to. Trusting in God's timing isn't easy. It requires patience, faith, and a willingness to let go of our own agendas. But when we do, we experience a peace that transcends our understanding. We come to realize that waiting isn't a sign of abandonment, but a sign of preparation. God is never late. He's always on time. So in those moments of doubt, in those times of waiting, remind yourself, God has a plan and He's working everything out in His perfect timing. Rest in the assurance that what He has for you will come at just the right moment, better than you ever imagined. And when that time comes, you'll see that it was worth every second of the wait. We all have a natural instinct to want to control things. We want to make sure everything goes according to plan, that everything works out the way we envision it. When things don't go as expected, or when the path is unclear, we often find ourselves trying to take charge, to fix things ourselves. But the truth is, there are times when we simply cannot control every aspect of our lives. And that's okay. In fact, it's often in letting go of control that we find the peace and freedom we've been searching for. Letting go of control doesn't mean that we stop being responsible or that we stop doing the things we know we should do. It doesn't mean abandoning our goals or our dreams. Rather, it means recognizing that despite our best efforts, there are things beyond our ability to manage. We can't control the future, we can't control other people, and we can't control every outcome. But what we can control is how we respond. When we try to control every situation, we only invite stress, frustration, and exhaustion into our lives. We take on burdens that we were never meant to carry. But when we release that need for control, we open ourselves to a greater sense of peace. We allow room for trust, and in that trust, we experience the kind of freedom that only comes from knowing that we don't have to handle everything on our own. We can hand our worries, our doubts, and our uncertainties over to God and trust that He will guide us through them. This act of surrender isn't a sign of weakness. It's an act of strength. It takes great courage to let go and to admit that we don't have all the answers. But when we do, we create space for God to step in and work in ways we never could have imagined. When we let go of control, we let go of fear. We trust that God is in charge and He is far more capable than we are. His wisdom far surpasses our understanding. And His plan for our lives is greater than anything we could ever devise on our own. Letting go of control also means trusting in God's process. Sometimes we get so focused on the outcome that we miss the beauty of the journey. We want everything to happen quickly to get to the destination as fast as possible. But God often works in seasons. He prepares us, molds us, and grows us along the way. If we're always focused on controlling the outcome, we miss out on the lessons and blessings that come in the waiting and in the process. It's in those moments when we let go that we truly experience God's presence. We begin to realize that we don't have to figure everything out ourselves. We don't have to carry the weight of the world. God is carrying us, and He's walking beside us every step of the way. And remember, letting go doesn't mean that we're passive or inactive. It means that we're trusting that God will guide us to the right decisions, the right people, and the right opportunities at the right time. We take action when He directs us, but we don't try to force things to happen on our own. So today, release the need to control every situation. Release yourself. Take a step back and breathe. Trust that God has everything under control. The weight you've been carrying is not yours to bear alone. Let go of your grip and allow God to do what only He can do. When you do, you'll find that the peace you've been searching for was waiting for you all along on the other side of surrender. There are times in life when we feel drained, when we reach the end of ourselves, and we're left wondering how we're going to make it through. How are you going to make it through? We face challenges that seem insurmountable, battles that leave us feeling worn out and defeated. In those moments, it's easy to feel like we're too weak to keep going. But I want to remind you today that God's strength is greater than any weakness we may face. Our human strength is limited. There are only so many hours in the day, only so much energy we can give before we start to burn out. We try to push through, we try to do it all, but eventually we hit a wall. It's in those moments of exhaustion, when we feel like we have nothing left to give, that God's strength comes in to carry us through. The beauty of God's strength is that it's not bound by the same limits that ours are. When we're weak, He is strong. His power is infinite. His resources never run dry, and His ability to sustain us is unmatched. We may feel like we can't go another step, but God is there, lifting us up when we don't have the energy to lift ourselves. He comes alongside us, giving us the strength we need to face whatever we're going through. There is something incredibly comforting about knowing that we don't have to rely on our own strength to get through life. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have all the answers, and we certainly don't have to have it all together. When we recognize our weakness, we open the door for God to step in and show us His power. And it's in our moments of vulnerability, in our moments of need, that God's strength shines brightest. The Apostle Paul talks about this in the Bible when he says that God's power is made perfect in our weakness. The very areas where we feel the most incapable, the most overwhelmed, are the areas where God's strength is most evident. Our struggles are not signs of failure. They are opportunities for God to display His greatness. When we lean on Him, when we admit that we can't do it on our own, He meets us right where we are and empowers us to go further than we ever thought possible. Sometimes God allows us to reach our limits so that we can experience His limitless strength. He doesn't want us to rely on our own abilities or our own understanding. He wants us to fully trust in Him, knowing that when we're at our weakest, He is at His strongest. It's when we surrender our fear and our doubt that we make room for Him to step in and do what only He can do. God's strength isn't just something we experience in the big life-altering moments. It's with us every day in every little task. Whether it's getting through a difficult conversation, dealing with a setback at work, or finding the courage to keep going when life feels overwhelming, God's strength is available to us in every circumstance. We just need to tap into it. So when you feel like you can't take another step, when you feel like you're not strong enough, remember that God is there to lift you up. His strength will carry you. His power will sustain you, and His grace will empower you to keep moving forward. No matter how weak you feel, His strength is more than enough. He is greater than any challenge, any obstacle, any setback. With God on your side, there is nothing you cannot overcome. Embrace your weakness, not as a failure, but as an opportunity to experience the unshakable strength of God. Trust that when you are weak, He is strong. And that strength will carry you through every trial, every difficulty, and every moment of doubt. With God's strength, you will always have what you need to keep going, no matter how difficult the journey may seem. In life, it's so easy to become consumed by the problems that we face. Whether it's health issues, financial struggles, or broken relationships, we can quickly find ourselves overwhelmed by the weight of our circumstances. It's only natural to focus on the challenges in front of us, to worry about how we're going to make it through. But in those moments, we must remind ourselves that we have a choice about where we focus our attention. We can focus on our problems, or we can focus on God's promises. Our problems are real. They're not something we can ignore or pretend don't exist. But when we choose to focus solely on our problems, we magnify them, and they can start to feel larger than life. We begin to lose sight of the bigger picture. We forget that our problems are temporary, but God's promises are eternal. His promises are unshakable, unwavering, and full of hope. The more we focus on the promises of God, the more we allow our hearts to be filled with peace, hope, and faith, no matter how difficult our circumstances may be. It's important to remember that focusing on our problems often leads to anxiety, fear, and doubt. The more we dwell on our struggles, the more we give power to them. But when we shift our focus to the promises of God, we start to see things differently. We begin to realize that the God who created the universe is the same God who is with us in our everyday struggles. We begin to understand that His promises are greater than any problem we may face. God's promises are not just words on a page. They are declarations of His faithfulness, His love, and His provision. When we feel inadequate, God promises to strengthen us. When we feel alone, He promises to never leave us or forsake us. When we face uncertainty, He promises to guide us and lead us on the right path. The more we immerse ourselves in these promises, the more we are reminded of God's character and His ability to overcome any obstacle. One of the biggest challenges in life is learning to trust in God's promises, especially when we're in the middle of a difficult situation. It's easy to believe in God's promises when everything is going well, but when life gets hard, it can feel like those promises are distant or unfulfilled. However, it's in the hardest moments that we need to lean into those promises the most. We need to remember that God's promises are not dependent on our circumstances. His promises are not fragile or fleeting. They are eternal, unchanging, and solid. Even when things don't make sense, we can trust that His promises are true and that He is faithful to fulfill them. Focusing on His promises requires us to shift our perspective. It's a conscious decision to take our eyes off the problem and put them on the one who is bigger than any problem we will ever face. It means choosing faith over fear, trust over doubt, and peace over anxiety. It means reminding ourselves that God is always working for our good, even when we can't see how. His timing is perfect, and He will always come through for us. The Bible is full of promises that remind us of God's goodness and faithfulness. He promises to provide for us, to give us peace that transcends understanding, and to work all things together for our good. When we begin to focus on these promises, we begin to understand that our promises are not the end of the story. They are simply a part of a greater narrative, one where God's promises shine brighter than our struggles. So when you find yourself weighed down by life's challenges, remember to turn your focus to God's promises. Spend time reflecting on the truth of His Word and allow it to fill your heart with hope and confidence. Don't let your problems define you. Let God's promises define you. Trust that He is faithful, that He is always with you, and that He will never leave you. When you focus on His promises, you'll find the strength, courage, and peace you need to face any challenge that comes your way. In the end, our problems are temporary, but God's promises are forever. And when we anchor our hearts in His promises, we can walk through life with a peace and assurance that nothing in this world can take away. Life often feels like a journey with so many twists and turns. At times we find ourselves overwhelmed by the road ahead, feeling like we need to have everything figured out right now. We may look at the future and it seems so far away, with an endless list of things to accomplish, decisions to make, and dreams to fulfill. It's easy to become paralyzed by the thought of the whole journey, to become anxious because the destination feels too distant or unclear. But here's something important to remember. We don't have to see the whole path all at once. And we don't have to have everything figured out today. We only need to take one step at a time. Taking one step at a time means trusting that each small action is leading us closer to where we need to be. Sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the bigger picture, in the overwhelming task of everything that lies ahead. But instead of focusing on the entire mountain that we need to climb, we need to focus on the next step right in front of us. God doesn't ask us to have everything figured out. He simply asks us to be faithful with the step we're on, to do what we can with what we have, and trust that He will guide us through each next phase of the journey. One of the reasons we become anxious is because we try to control everything in our future. We want to know exactly how everything will unfold, when it will happen, and what the end result will be. But life rarely works like that. We can't always control the outcome, and we can't predict what will happen in the future, but we can control how we respond in the present. We can take the step that's right in front of us, even if we don't know exactly where it leads. The beauty of taking one step at a time is that it removes the pressure of having to do everything all at once. When we break things down, when we focus on the next right action instead of the entire journey, we realize that it's manageable. God doesn't expect us to carry the weight of the entire journey on our shoulders. He just wants us to keep moving even when the road feels uncertain or hard. One step forward, no matter how small, is still progress. When we focus on just one step, we allow ourselves the space to trust in God's timing. We take the pressure off ourselves to have everything happen at once, and instead we lean into His rhythm, knowing that each step is part of a bigger purpose. It's in the small, consistent actions that we find growth. As we take each step in faith, God directs our path and opens doors that we couldn't have imagined when we were standing at the beginning, unsure of the road ahead. Taking one step at a time also means being patient with ourselves. We're all on different journeys, and just because someone else seems to be moving faster or further along doesn't mean we should compare ourselves. God's plan for each of us is unique, and we each have our own pace. It's easy to get discouraged when we look at the distance others have traveled, but remember, the most important thing is that you are moving forward at your own pace, trusting that God has a perfect plan for your life. When life feels overwhelming, remind yourself that you don't have to carry the weight of everything at once. It's okay if you don't have all the answers. It's okay if you don't see the full picture right now. What matters is that you take one step, and then another, and then another. With each step you take, you're building momentum. You're moving closer to the future God has prepared for you. even if you can't yet see all that lies ahead. There will be times when you face obstacles, when things don't go as planned, when you feel stuck or discouraged. But when you take one step at a time, you're not expected to have everything figured out. You're simply moving forward, trusting that the next step will come when you're ready for it. And every time you take that next step, you grow stronger, more confident, and more equipped for the journey. Taking one step at a time also means trusting that God will guide you along the way. You don't have to see the whole map. Just trust that God will light the next step and the next one after that. He is with you every step of the way, and He will never leave you. When you focus on one step at a time, you can rest in the knowledge that you're not in this alone. So today, when life feels too overwhelming, or when you're unsure of the path ahead, remind yourself, all you need to do is take the next step. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to have it all figured out. But you can trust that each small step is leading you exactly where you need to go. Keep moving forward one step at a time, and you'll be amazed at how far you'll go. When we face trials, setbacks, or difficult moments in life, it's easy to become focused on the immediate challenges at hand. The weight of our present struggles can sometimes cloud our vision, making us forget about the many times in the past when God has been faithful. It's important, though, in these times of hardship, to take a moment and remember. Remember the times when God has shown up for us, when He has been our provider, our protector, and our guide. Remembering His past faithfulness can remind us that the same God who carried us through the storms of yesterday will carry us through the trials of today. Sometimes, when life is hard, we have a tendency to forget all the ways God has been good to us in the past. We start to focus solely on the mountain before us, and we feel overwhelmed by its size, as though we are facing something that is impossible to overcome. But when we pause and reflect on all the times that God has already seen us through difficult seasons, we can regain our confidence in His ability to handle whatever comes our way. Think back to the moments when you thought you wouldn't make it, when you were uncertain of how things would turn out, yet somehow you made it through. That wasn't by your own strength, it was by God's grace and faithfulness. He provided for you when you didn't see a way. He opened doors when you thought they were shut, and He gave you peace when you were anxious and afraid. The challenges you faced in the past may have seemed insurmountable at the time, but looking back, you can see how God worked everything together for good. It's so important to recall these moments because they serve as a reminder that God doesn't change. His faithfulness is constant. The same God who parted the Red Sea for the Israelites, who delivered David from Goliath, and who provided for Elijah during a drought, is the same God who is with you now. He hasn't changed, and He will not fail you. When you remember the countless ways He has been faithful in the past, you realize that your current struggles are not beyond His ability to handle. You're not facing them alone. He is still with you, just as He has always been. Remembering God's past faithfulness also helps us to build our faith for the future. When we look back at how God has been faithful time and time again, we begin to realize that He can be trusted with our present and our future. If He took care of us then, He will continue to take care of us now. The same God who helped us through the tough seasons of the past is the same God who will help us face whatever lies ahead. Our faith grows stronger when we hold on to the truth that God has been faithful before and He will be faithful again. Another beautiful thing about remembering His past faithfulness is that it fills us with gratitude. When we look at all the ways God has come through for us, it brings a deep sense of thankfulness for His provision, His protection, and His love. Gratitude has a way of shifting our focus from our current problems to God's goodness. It reminds us that despite the challenges, we have so much to be thankful for. And as we focus on what God has done in the past, we find that our present struggles don't seem as overwhelming. And there may be times when we feel like God is silent or distant, especially when we're in the midst of a trial. But even when it feels like He isn't answering or acting as quickly as we'd like, remembering how He's been faithful in the past reassures us that He is still working, even if we can't see it in the moment. There are moments when God's timing and methods don't match our expectations, but He's always working behind the scenes, orchestrating things in our favor, even when we don't understand it. As we look back on our own personal journeys, we can also find encouragement from the stories of others. The Bible is full of testimonies of God's faithfulness. From the time He delivered Daniel from the lion's den to when He raised Jesus from the dead. These stories remind us that God's faithfulness is not limited to a particular time or place. It is available to all of us, no matter what we're facing. When we remember His past faithfulness, we gain a deeper trust in His character. We come to understand that God is a covenant-keeping God. He keeps His promises, and He will never leave us or forsake us. His love for us is unshakable, and His power is limitless. No matter what storm we're in, God has the ability to calm it, just as He calmed the storm for the disciples on the sea. We can rest in the knowledge that He is in control, and He will guide us safely through. So when you find yourself feeling uncertain or anxious about the future, take a moment to reflect on the past. Look at the many times God has shown His faithfulness to you. Think about the times He answered your prayers, the times He provided for you when you didn't know how you'd make it. Remember His goodness, His love, and His ability to work things out for your good. In those moments, you will find the strength to face whatever lies ahead, knowing that the same God who has been faithful before will continue to be faithful in the future. In those quiet moments of reflection, you'll discover that His faithfulness is more than just a past event. It's a living truth that you can hold on to today. A reminder that no matter what you're facing, God is still with you, still faithful, and still working on your behalf. It's natural to feel comfortable with what we know, to find security in the familiar. We often build our lives around routines, relationships, and jobs that give us a sense of stability. There's nothing wrong with wanting security, but the danger lies in becoming so set in our ways that we close ourselves off to new opportunities, new experiences, and new possibilities. The truth is, life is full of surprises. And if we're not open to what's ahead, we might miss out on the incredible things God has prepared for us. Being open to new possibilities doesn't mean abandoning everything we've known or loved, but rather having the courage to look beyond the horizon, to embrace the unknown with faith and trust. Often, God has something bigger and better in store for us than we can even imagine. But if we're too stuck in our ways or too afraid of change, we may miss it. The possibilities that God wants to bring into our lives often come in forms we don't expect, and they require us to step out of our comfort zones and take a leap of faith. New possibilities often involve change, and change can be scary. It's easy to stay in a situation that feels familiar, even if it's not fulfilling, because we're afraid of what might happen if we take a different path. But if we only ever do what we've always done, we'll only ever see the same results. God calls us to grow, to stretch, and to step into the new seasons He has planned for us. These seasons may look different than what we imagined, but they are full of potential and opportunities to learn, grow, and experience life in ways we never thought possible. When we keep an open heart and an open mind, we invite new possibilities into our lives. Sometimes it's not about having everything figured out right away. It's about being willing to step into something unfamiliar, trusting that God will guide us along the way. Whether it's a new job, a new relationship, or a new city, God is constantly presenting us with chances to expand our horizons and move into new seasons of life. These new beginnings often come with challenges, but they are also filled with blessings and growth that we can't fully comprehend until we take that first step. Being open to new possibilities also requires letting go of the past. It's easy to look back at our previous successes and failures, or old dreams, or the things that didn't work out, and feel like we've reached our limit. But we serve a God who is always doing new things. He is not bound by the past. He is constantly at work, shaping our futures and presenting us with new opportunities. When we hold on to past disappointments or past successes, we may limit ourselves from experiencing the fullness of what God has for us now. Letting go of the past and being open to what's ahead doesn't mean forgetting what we've learned or abandoning everything that's been important to us. It simply means recognizing that God is not finished with us yet. The chapters of our lives are still being written, and He has a future that's filled with hope and possibility. We have to trust that whatever we're facing today is not the end of the story. God is preparing us for something new, and when we're open to it, we'll be able to walk into that new season with excitement and anticipation. Openness also means being receptive to the guidance of the Holy Spirit. There are times when God places new opportunities right in front of us, but we might overlook them because we're so focused on our own plans. When we stay open and in tune with the Holy Spirit, we become more sensitive to the opportunities God is placing in our path. We may feel a tug in our hearts to take a step we hadn't considered or to move in a direction that feels unfamiliar. But it's often in those moments of divine prompting that God is leading us to something greater than we could have planned on our own. One of the most powerful things about being open to new possibilities is that it helps us to move forward even when we don't have all the answers. So often we want clarity before we take a step, but faith doesn't always come with a map. Sometimes God asks us to trust Him and take a step into the unknown. When we're open to new possibilities, we release our need for control and step into a life of adventure, where God is the one leading us, not our own understanding. Being open also means embracing change with a positive attitude. It's easy to resist change, to see it as a threat or a challenge. But change can be the very thing that propels us to a new level of growth. When we stay flexible and adaptable, we are better able to recognize and seize the new opportunities that come our way. Change isn't always easy, but it's often the catalyst for personal transformation, the kind of growth that can move us into new realms of purpose and potential. As we open ourselves to new possibilities, we begin to see the world differently. We see it through the lens of potential, not limitation. We recognize that God is always at work doing new things in our lives, and we begin to expect the unexpected. We look for new opportunities, new relationships, and new experiences with anticipation, knowing that God is leading us into a future that is full of hope and promise. We are no longer bound by fear or the comfort of what we've always known. We are free to embrace the unknown, to explore the future, and to trust that God's plans for us are always good. So today, I encourage you to stay open to the new possibilities that God wants to bring into your life. Don't limit yourself by past disappointments or by what you think you already know. Trust that God has amazing things ahead for you, things that are beyond your imagination, and that He is guiding you every step of the way. When you open your heart to the possibilities of the future, you invite the adventure of God's purpose into your life, and you'll find that the journey He has for you is filled with greater joy, fulfillment, and impact than you ever thought possible. In conclusion, I want to remind you that life is a journey full of twists, turns, and unknown paths. It's easy to get caught up in worry, to focus on the challenges and obstacles that lie before us. But we are never alone in this journey. God is with us, guiding us every step of the way, and He has promised that He will carry us through. When we stop worrying and trust in His faithfulness, we allow His peace to fill our hearts. We embrace His timing, let go of control, and lean into His strength. We focus on His promises, not our problems, and we take each step with faith, knowing that He will direct our path. And when life presents new opportunities, we stay open, trusting that the same God who has been faithful to us in the past will continue to be faithful in the future. You are never alone on this journey. God has equipped you with everything you need to face whatever comes your way. Remember His past faithfulness. Take one step at a time and open your heart to the amazing possibilities He has for you. Trust that the future He has planned for you is filled with hope, and He will never leave you or forsake you. No matter what life throws your way, you can be confident that God will carry you through. Keep walking in faith, for your best days are ahead. God bless you.